versamen salir. Blóðóks verð og dauði kallar. Brú ralla og örlög bundin í eld. Ver lífum í og fallum og nú. Blóðið blóðralla verður aldrei sundrast. Í stormi og skugga ver saman standa. Óðinn fylgir og hel og mjölnir slagur. Der og sigur bröðralla ver hvetvar. Rafnar fljúga sálir og kandlir. Við drukkum sár og sigruðum stríð. Eitt hjarta, eitt sál og sverð í hendi. Og í dauða og myrkri við standum endi. Blóðbreið alla ver aldrei sundrast. Í stormi og skugga ver saman standa. Óðinn fylgir og hel og mjölnir
Hey, all right. So I originally had a much more psychotic song in mind to open the show, but I'm gonna play it a little bit later just because I like that so much. I felt like I'll get more psychotic after the first break. I kind of want to have a cooler song because the psychotic song is meant to kind of just be something that's reflective of what I think is kind of driving people crazy. But anyway, welcome to the show. We are continuing on with our read of the Babylonian Talmud, by which I hear that the Jews refer more so as their modus operandi than the Torah. You know, the so called books of Moses, right? They don't want you to understand that the Talmud is more important because they don't want you to understand what some of them believe. And there are very few that kind of fully realize it. But it's a crazy thing when you live in a certain ontological corner of the universe, right? And yeah. So anyway, we're gonna see how things go. Let's get into chapter 1 finally, and we're gonna read quite a bit because chapter 1's like really short. Like these chapters are there's no particular length like structure per se. So anyway, let's do this. Section Moed Festivals. Synopsis of subjects of Volume 1 Sact Sabbath. Synopsis of subjects. Several several requests have been received by the translator that an index should be made to the volumes of the Talmud, as is customary with all modern works. It would be an utter impossibility to give a complete index of everything contained in the Talmud. Were it like other scientific works which treat each subject separately, this could easily be done. But with the Talmud it is different. On one page many different subjects may be discussed, and again a single subject may occupy several pages. The Talmud therefore has never had an index, not even the portions which have been translated. That which is interesting, right? So with the Talmud you can't do what the Bible does, right? You know, we chapter and verse the Bible, and you know, there's something by which you have an orderly process, because you have the Torah, and then you've got all these other historical sections and other notable occurrences that involve some sort of movement of God's will, or some sort of moral retribution story, and so on and so forth, right? And which is why there may or may not be buried deep in all of this something that is much more folklorish. It is my contention that what they talk about with the kingdom of Israel, the city of Jerusalem, is mythology, right? It's like talking about Asgard, but it is so effing divorced from the pagan themes, because you feel like it's got nothing to do with you. because it's not your blood. It's not something that happened to your ancestors, right? Like, your commonality with the heroes of this story break somewhere between Moses, or somewhere between Noah and Abram. And then subdivided again, right, by Moses. And Moses, and the book of Exodus is the book of Exodus is very interesting, and I would have to go back into what I know about the whole Akhenaten thing, which will be coming up, I am sure, which has a lot to do with the baseline work of Michael Sarian, but also when you understand the deep knowledge of Egyptian mythos and what's going on with the rabbinical order that's in question, involving the Moses situation in the land of Kemet. That's with Seth Exposa over Black Earth Productions. I have been hard pressed for these many years of me finding other people with better answers in this angle of looking for what matters. After careful examination of the volumes, page by page, it has been decided to make a synopsis, i.e. to give briefly the heads of the discussions and conversations upon each Mishnah, indicating the page where the Mishnah is to be found and the Gemara of each one, which serves as a commentary. By this, the reader should be able to refer to what he desires to know. A synopsis is therefore given of every Mishnah, which discusses a single subject with its accompanying Gemara. But when several short Mishnahs cover the same subject, a single synopsis is given of the whole, including the Gemara of each one, and where a chapter is short and has but one subject, a synopsis of the whole chapter is made without dividing into Mishnahs. All right. This is the best that can be done, and it is hoped that readers will find it satisfactory. Chapter 1. Mishnah 1. Regulations concerning prohibited and permitted acts of transfer over the dividing line of adjoining premises and the area of such premises. The classification of premises in which premises transfer is permitted. Laws of transfer of labor. When committed by the joint efforts of two persons, transfer from and to doorsteps. Mishnah 2. Whether work may be commenced at the approach of the time for afternoon prayer, what kind of work is referred to, how a man should pray, what he must wear, what he may eat his midday meal, the informing of the bestowal of gifts, Sabbath as a valuable gift of God and its origin, various legends of Reba bar Mehasya in the name of Rab. Mishnah 3. Tailors and other artisans are not permitted to go out with their tools on Friday near eventide. Treats also on whether one may read by lamplight on the Sabbath, the laws of visiting the sick, what prayers may be offered for the sick. Mishnah 4. 2. Mishnah 6. So for some reason they're all in one thing, I guess. How the 18 famous ordinances were instituted in the attic of Hananiah ben Hetzkiah ben Gorion, and by whom the roll of fasts was written, which acts of labor may be commenced on Friday Eve, concerning labor which is accomplished without assistance of man on Sabbath. Laws concerning labor which is accomplished without assistance of man on Sabbath. Laws concerning work given to Gentiles. Narratives of R. Simon ben Gamaliel concerning how his father's house dealt with Gentile clothes washers. How special treatment for how a non-Jew working in your house washed your clothes. So this would be interesting that he's using the word Gentile and not a goy, right? When do they start getting derogatory with the goy terms, right? Is it even good to be called a Gentile by these people? I suppose it's slightly less insulting. I don't know if it's an appropriate title though. But yet still, it still is an alienating title, right? It's like, it's not okay for the white man to call anybody a racial slur, but it's okay for everybody else to call each other racial slurs. As long as you don't call the Jews a racial slur. Do you see how this works? And in what twisted way is this a mere mockery in the Islamic world and other places where they deliberately make our cultures more contentious to each other than they naturally would be if we just fucking came to the table like civil human beings? On transmission of letters and journeying on ships on the Sabbath, regulations pertaining to the roasting of meats and baking of bread before the Sabbath, the sacrifices at the temple on the Passover. Chapter 2, Mishnah 1 and 2. Permissible and non-permissible oils and wicks for lamps on the Sabbath and Hanukkah. Feasts of Maccabees, the law of the Hanukkah lights, Hanukkah and the miracle, the duration of Hanukkah, benedictions to be said on the festival, the reward of those who keep the Sabbath-like commandments, the reward of those who esteem scholarship. The second Mishnah treats on what balsams may and may not be used both for light and for the person on the Sabbath. Narrative of a woman who hated her daughter-in-law who may be called a rich man. Wait, what? What balsams may and may not be used for both for Sabbath? A narrative of a woman who hated her daughter-in-law who may be called... Yeah, and then who may be called a rich man. Who may be called a rich man. Is this like Fiddler on the Roof? Is that what the song is about? Anyway. Mishnah 3 to 5. What wicks made from parts of trees may be used. Whether broken vessels may be used for fuel on a biblical feast clay. What may be done with the residue of oil left in a lamp, practical laws of eggshells, and whether chairs may be dragged on the floor on Sabbath. The different opinion of R. Eliezer and R. Akiba concerning the defilement of a piece of cloth, and if it is allowed to make a wick of it. What happened with R. Yehuda in the hall of Beth Nitza and the Abhin of Zephoris, who committed certain acts which were not allowed in the presence of the sages. Mishnah 6. Whether a light may be extinguished on Sabbath either for fear of accident or to afford rest for the sick. The question asked R. Tanhum of Nav and his replying sermon, the soul being called the light of God. The intended concealment of the book of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. the Shekinah, divine presence, not resting with a man except through his joy of having performed a good deed. Rabbah, custom when commencing his lecture to his disciples. R. Gamaliel's sermon and answer to the disciple who derided him. The story of the three proselytes rejected by Shammai and accepted by Hillel. What is hateful to thee? Do not unto thy neighbor, that is the law. All else is but a commentary. The 6 sections of the Mishnah are inferred from a biblical passage. The first thing asked of a man when standing before the divine judgment is, hast thou traded in good faith? The fear of the Lord is the chief principle. The wicked fear death, although mentioning it every day. All right, so right now, by the way, because, like all this stuff, most of it, like, I have no idea, like, this thing makes references without explaining the answers, right? So they're, the way that it's collectioned together. So, it kind of implies, that these are not, like, this is more like ritual stuff, not so much what you do with yourself when you're not doing ritual for purity. This is more like the proper way that you are going through the things that you do in the Sabbath time, once you've finally gotten to the to what you're doing with your community, right? And this keeps you on the weekly work cycle, and it keeps you stuck in your ontological loop. Which we talked about yesterday. All right, Mishnahs 7 and 8. The sins of women are passed upon when confined in childbirth. The sins of men while in danger, a good deed is committed through the agency of meritorious person, and a bad deed through the agency of the wicked. All who are about to die must repent of their sins. The defenders of man before divine judgment are repentance and good deeds. A 1,000th part of one defender saves a man from the danger threatened him by 1,000 accusers. The penalties imposed once upon blah 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 blah. The penalties imposed upon man for hating without cause, for robbery, for perverting or procrastinating justice, for destroying the law, for murder, for adultery, for idolatry, for using obscene language. The story of R. Simeon ben Yohai, who remained in a cave for 12 years. The causes leading up to his concealment in the cave, his adventures after leaving the cave, the 3 things to be said by a man in his house on Friday Eve, how they are to be said when twilight takes place, how many signals of the horn were blown to remind the people of the advent of the Sabbath. Is there a difference between a shofar and a fife? Chapter 3. Mishnahs 1 and 2. In which hearths or ovens victuals may be deposited on the Sabbath. The opinions of the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai concerning the same. The different opinions upon the teaching of the 2 schools. The victuals having once been taken out of an oven, would it be allowed to replace them? The law concerning a pot of victuals which had been forgotten and was thus spoke on the Sabbath. Usages of R. Jose on his, or Harhios I don't know how you're meant to pronounce that. On his way to Zipporah, and of Ar Yehuda Hanasi when traveling. A narrative of Ar Ishai while in the presence of Arhea the Great. The difference in law between an oven and a hearth. Also, difference arising from an oven or a hearth being heated with straw or with wood. Okay, I see what you mean. All right. Mishnahs 3 through 7. Customs on the people of Tiberias relative to the heating of a pitcher of cold water. Is it allowed to place a pitcher of cold water into one filled with hot water in order to heat the water, or vice versa? In order to heat the water, may one wash his body in the warm water of the Tiberias spring or in water warmed on the Sabbath eve? It's so crazy to think that God set up the schedule of the universe to make you have anxiety about the necessity of doing this with your life every fucking week until you die. You have to live by this schedule. And there's a lot to be said about what they're doing with living like this, right? This also has a lot to do with talking, like leaving it up to like debate almost. Right? I mean, like, why wouldn't it be simple enough to just simply write down what you do? Right? And it's also very, if this is what they're reading off of in the Talmud, then obviously there's a whole lot of, there has to be some extracurricular that you have to go through the thing to be in on. And just it's quite something. And and let me point this out, like thus far since the chapter started, I haven't seen anything ultra horrendous, save for the whole point I just made about, like, this is what everybody's just gotta fucking do. It's very fascist, right? It's just like, when you're living in any uniform world, you are in fascism. The mayor of New York is a collectivist, an anti-individualist. Right? And he may not take it to where you think he's going to take it, but he's going to take it somewhere that is going to make a whole lot of people not understand what the fuck is wrong and going on. And with all things going on in the country and the world, we'll see how long this guy's mayoral situation is going to be a functional thing. We'll see how it works. Listen, I guarantee you there will be a handful of things that work. I have a feeling that there's going to be a handful of things that are going to work really well because of things that transcend Mamdani that are going to happen. Just like there's a lot of things in America that work pretty well now because of reasons that transcend Trump. Some things the controllers are conceding to. They'll never concede to anything that you don't fucking fight for, which is why every fight's fucking worth it. And people have kind of figured that out. We're just not unified in anything yet because we're going through some Aquarius levels of conversation. This being a part of it. May one wash his body in the warm water of the Tiberias spring or in water warmed on the Sabbath eve. May the entire body be washed at once or each member separately. Customs in a bathhouse are sweat baths permitted on the Sabbath, incidents occurring in the bathhouse of the city of Bunai Brak, why sweat baths were prohibited. May one warm himself by a hearth fire, is bathing oneself. Could you imagine if you had to do this every day? Imagine if your religion asked you to do this every day. This is just once a week. Fuck, man. Right? and I'm not even talking about things that are bad yet. Self with oil is permitted on the Sabbath. Use of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi in the matter is swimming in a lake permitted on the Sabbath. Incidents attending are zeras, witnessing are abuhus, swimming in a lake on a Sabbath. Concerning the permissibility of pouring cold water in a mulir or antiki, the fuel of which had been removed. That's a very particular freaking detail. Or in a kettle, the hot water of which had been poured out, the prescribed quantity of such water, concerning the addition of spices to a pot of victuals, concerning the permissibility of placing a vessel under a burning lamp to receive its dripping oil or falling sparks, and the placing of a vessel under a hen to receive the eggs. Ordinance related to a corpse lying in the sun if it is allowed to save a corpse from the fire. Prayers to be offered on Sabbath over the dead. Accordance of permission to save a corpse from conflagration on the Sabbath. All right. Okay, we're going to read Mishnahs 8 through 9, and then we'll take a break for chapter 4. Concerning the handling of new and old lamps on the Sabbath, ordinances relative to a bed with which had been designated for the purpose of holding money on the Sabbath. A bed for the purposes... Like, this is such a fucking... This is like... Who would fuck with imagine the first generation. The first generation that started fucking putting some rules, some Sabbath rules up. Dear God. Like, no wonder these people are just a little bit fucking irate. The permissibility of handling a burning Hanukkah lamp for fear of the Persians. The law. That's hysterical. That is hysterical. For fear of they're very... Does the Talmud condition them to fear the Persians? Isn't the whole fucking thing that was, making that Israel was all freaking, excited about was that, Trump was, the new King Cyrus or something who let them build their second temple or whatever. Like, he's the guy who let them build their fucking temple, which then got fucking subsequently destroyed by the Romans because of their fucking horrible bad behavior that we read about in the Jewish War. You should watch it. The ordinance relative to handling a lamp on... Okay, in fear of the... in fear of the person. The law of Mukza, which almost looks like MK Ultra. Doesn't that look like MK Ultra? The law of Mukza. The ordinance of relative to handling a lamp on Sabbath, and the dictum of Resh Lakish in Zidane. The ordinance concerning the nuptial couch. What's a nuptial couch? An action of R. Malkia while the guest of R. Samlai and R. Abahu at the house of R. Joshua ben Levi and R. Yohanan. The experience of R. Avia, who came to the house of Rabbah and sat on Rabbah's bed without removing his dirty clothes. Questions put to him by Rabbah and his replies, the law of a principal prohibited act. What R. Hanina did with a folding bed that had become unfastened on a feast day. Like, see, this is why Judaism isn't pagan. There's no pagan fucking world where people live like this. Except in cults, right? There's a difference between, like, you decided to go join a cult versus this is our open culture, what everybody does. Going through these kinds, this is a culture of unnatural, obsessive compulsion. This is obsessive compulsive disorder, right? Because, like, you every single week, you have to worry about how you act on this fucking day to this level. That is riding your ass. That is choking your nervous system. That is keeping you, to a limit of growth and development. In which you live in a world where you think your people's growth and development is everything in the bee's knees, and especially because of any legitimate history strung to it, and all of the special boy fucking promises that your whole heart and soul rests upon, and you just... Some people would feel so ontologically threatened by that, they would fucking kill you right there, as if you were summoning the devil himself. Excuse me. All right. Folding bed that had become... Okay, so hold on. I experienced RV had a house at a dirty shit. Okay, hold on. Where was it? Zeta and Oranges concerning nuptial cow. Experiencing Rava sat Rava's without dirty shoes. Oh, the shoes. Got it. Well, hold on. Okay, so wait. He sat on Rabbah's bed without removing his... Well, hold on. Was he sitting or lying in it? Because when I sit, to me, the act of sitting, my feet are on the ground. Because my hips are hinged. Why would I sit with my feet on the bed? You can't sit on a bed? Like, with your shoes on? Why don't you just say the problem is that he was wearing the shoes in the room? Why can't we be Japanese about it, right? See, Japanese, right? That's just that's culture. That's not cult. That's just like Japanese custom. Do not wear shoes in the house. That is not horrendously different than most houses in in America that for me it's kind of cussing. Don't really wear. Yeah, I mean it's healthier on the floor, and honestly, it's good to get your. It's good to free up your toes too. It's good to let your toes have wiggle room. Okay. Question put to him by Rabbah and his replies. The law of a principal prohibited act. What our Hanina did with a folding bed that had become unfastened on a feast day. Like, why did the folding bed have to be involved with the feast day to need to worry about it getting unfastened? That is so many levels of ridiculous. You're wasting your time probably the day before preparing, making sure everything is all like this is one way you Saturnianly fucking enslave people. Just you're in like literally if you're enslaved to one day in a 7-day cycle for the rest of your life, this turns the Sabbath. If the Sabbath is a day of rest, why the fuck are you working so hard to be in a day of fucking rest? No, or it's God's day of rest, so it's your day to stress the fuck out. God needs you to stress the fuck out so he can be at rest? What's the logic here? All right. So, the most appropriate song I decided to go with is Psychroptic's Carnival of Vulgarity. Enjoy. Yep, that's about how I feel if I would have to remember all this nonsense and think it was important to like the integrity of the known universe or something. It's quite, it's all this ultimately boils down to, listen, we are shit. It is a privilege to exist. This is what God requires for us to exist. Right? This is the subtext, right? And the story etched upon the heart of everybody coming out of what they think is the religion of these people. They have no idea how wrong they are, right? Chapter 4, Mishnahs 1 to 4. What substance may be used for preserving of victuals, Rabbah and Arzera, upbraiding of a slave of the exilarch, while sojourning in the latter's house, concerning the replacing of feathers in a pillow, concerning the opening of a bung head in a barrel, and the making of a neck band in a shirt. It's just like, okay, look, it's amazing when you, it's just like, it's the Sabbath. Just don't do anything but have this particular kind of meal, this particular kind of drink, be in this particular kind of place, understand what to do in the rituals, and don't do anything else. Right? But no. It's got to be all this stuff. You have to be told, nope. You can't make a neckband. That's working. You have to be specifically told that. You can't just say, just don't do any work. It's like, hey, what are you doing? I need to fix my neck. What'd you say? You fixing? Don't fix. Fix is work. Like, you don't have to fucking make, like, for every little thing. You just simplify it. You don't let it fluster your nervous system. But anyway, I guess at the end of the day, the point is that you are telling somebody don't fix your neckband just because it's a Sabbath. And it has to be written down there that specifically. And yeah, but anyway, let's see here. Concerning the permissibility of depositing victuals in cloth and shorn wool intended for market. The derivation of 39 principal acts of labor on the Sabbath from the 39 times work is mentioned in the Pentateuch. The law concerning branches of trees which were bound together to be used for fuel and were subsequently intended for sitting upon. Yes, because you would fascize your branches to make them strong enough to hold your weight, or to hold together and burn together. Arhanina ben Akiba's action in such a case. The ordinance relating to the use of soap, powder, and soap on the Sabbath. The necessity of washing one's hands and feet for the sake of the Creator. What is to be done with a pot that had been covered on the eve of Sabbath? The decision of Ishmael in the matter of the presence of Rabbi. The mutual respect of the sages for one another. Ar Naaman's statement to Doan, his servant. Chapter 5. Mishnahs 1 to 3. What gear animals may go out in on the Sabbath? Levi the son of Arhuna bar Chaya and Rabbi the son of Arhuna. Occurrence on the road. A bridle may be worn by an ass whose behavior is bad. A bridle is allowed as a guard but not as an ornament. An ass may go out with a rug, but what is the law concerning a saddle? Ordinances relative to a feed bag, the decision of Eriach of Babylon, Samuel in the matter, concerning the bags tied around the udders of she-goats. The miracle that was wrought for a man whose wife died and left him a nursing child. The discussion of rabbis about such a miracle. Narrative relating to a man whose wife was maimed, concerning the gear which may not be worn by animals on Sabbath, peculiarities of the Hanun tree and where it may be found. The wealth of R. Eliezer ben Azariah. Penalty for the failure to warn one's family against evil. Well, that one sounds like it might be fair. I mean, all that evil, right? The different signs on the forehead of the righteous and the wicked, the seal of God, derivations of the merits of the fathers. Is death possible without sin? Defense for Reuben and others who are mentioned in the Bible as sinners. See, even Dave Reuben isn't necessarily a sinner. Anyway, Rabbi Hanassi's justification for David. Was David guilty of listening to slander? Consequences of David's sin. King Solomon's sin. The Archangel Gabriel's act at the time of King Solomon's marriage with Pharaoh's daughter. The most fervent penitence. Chapter 6. Mishnahs 1 to 3. What garments a woman may go out in. Definition of Totafoth. Concerning the garb of slaves. May the rabbis... Hey, would they like to amend that? I mean, like, I suppose, like, you can put it in the, we don't need to worry about those laws anymore. We're not allowed to have slaves. Wink, wink, hint, hint, say no more. Concerning the garb of slaves. So, may the rabbis wear their insignia of office on Sabbath. Effects of a sermon on the woman of the city of Mehuzah concerning ornaments in the shape of a crown. Interesting. And they use the word ornament instead of the word jewelry, which has the word Jew in it. Ordinances concerning nose bands, earrings, and finger rings. What garments a man must not go out in. Consequences of wearing iron-bound sandals. The law of majority. How shoes are to be put on. Why one, when anointing himself, should first anoint the head. Law concerning amulets. Both tried and untried. Ordinances concerning hairpins and perfume bottles. Causes of poverty. The trees of Jerusalem. Mishnahs 4 to 9. Concerning bows, swords, and shields. We're getting medieval now, boy. Slaves, bows, swords, shields. What's next? Trebuchets. How does one park their trebuchet in the king's courtyard on the Sabbath during the royal hunt? I don't know. You see what I'm saying? Like, there'll be all these dated things. It's all in there, but, like, even though none of it is fucking relevant anymore because the universe around them doesn't do those things anymore. So, would that also mean that this would get updated to knives, Kevlars, and guns, knives, and armors, right? Or maybe because you don't really wear a shield, you hold a shield. You know, it's literally just shields. Like, you know, we have shields today. Policemen use shields all the time. Are they considered ornaments, or is the wearing of such things degrading? Interpretation of biblical passages, are they to be taken literally or figuratively? Rewards emanating from the proper study of the law. Customs of scholars when discussing the law. God's blessing upon the scholars who mutually instruct one another regarding a man who keeps a vicious dog about his premises. Why the children of Israel... See, that's a really good one, right? Like, that's pretty understandable if you are really into wanting to, like, do this. Like, I'm sure that within their congregation, because there will be so much of the warmth because they love that you're doing the thing as one of them, everything is happy, and I think it's got its problems that are similar to a cult in the way that the Jews do this stuff. However, it's not like a cult per se. It's a little bit different. I don't know if it's better or worse. I mean, it is a family affair, but I don't know. It's interesting, right? And it's also a question of, like, how many of these people wouldn't leave just because they're into the power play? But they're also nobodies with delusions of grandeur, and they get themselves in trouble or something. I don't know. How do you get out of this if you're in it, right? Okay. Are they considered ornaments? Okay, is things degrading, emanating? Okay, okay. Interpretation of biblical passages, are they to be taken literally or figuratively? Rewards emanating from the proper study of the law. Now, remember, this is part of the Talmud. This is about, is this literal? Is this figurative? You know, it would be very, very, it would be great if Christians just stopped and said to themselves, hey, look, I think being a Christian is more than just how great I think this book is, because I don't want you to take it too literally. Because it's not that great of a book if you take it literally. Right? And we're talking about the sources of the Bible. Like we're not just talking about, them looking at Jewish moral behavior in the Torah. We're talking about, this is the whole of their fucking thing that we talked about in the prior one. Like, I'm forgetting, Mishnah was like part of the title of it, right? Like, hold on a second. We're on page 28 right now. I'm going to go back a second. I'm going to go back up here just to get the name of the thing. They said it 50 million times in the opening. Where are we here? Yeah, where was it? It was the Mishnah. The Mishnah's enumerate 39. But it wasn't, it was a longer word than that. The hell was it? Shoot. Was I up here? Yeah, the brief okay, no, I was up here, excuse me. Yeah, the Mishnah Yoth. The Mishnah Yoth. And these are called Mishnahs, but the whole thing is the Mishnah Yoth. All right. Back to 28. All right, good. Good. Jumped right to it. Okay. Oh, and that's right. I jumped ahead, didn't I? Where was it? I read that one word and I said, didn't that sound kind of like MK Ultra? And then I forgot to look into it. I literally wanted to look up the word. Where was that word? It was the one word I actually was thinking to myself, I want to look that up. The Mahuza, oh, that might have been a page back. Did I go that far back? I might have. I was pretty dedicated to how much I was reading here, wasn't I? Could have sworn I saw it somewhere on the left side of the page, so my eye is kind of scanning. Ah, there it is. Found it. I want to know what this is. Copy, paste. Bear with me. Okay. What is... Hang on. No, that's not right. What is... Didn't copy the word properly. Oh, what did it do? It did that. That's what it did. Sorry. I said copy. Then... There we go. Buketz is a Jewish law that restricts the movement of certain objects on the Sabbath and Jewish holidays. Yom Tov items classified as muktzeh are generally not to be moved or handled during these times as they were not prepared for use before the Sabbath began. I see. It's a concept. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Never mind. Ah! All right. Anyway, okay, muktzah translates to set aside, allegedly, according to Shabbat.org. Okay, which, all of that I can actually kind of see is why it would kind of seem like it's an MK Ultra similar word to set aside, which is in MK Ultra you are setting aside a part of the psyche to be a sleeper identity within the subject, right? And because this term is for something that is an object, it is the objectification or the exploitation of a person. And by giving them an unconscious persona, which is loyal to them against their will. All right, let's go back down to where I was. Chapter, right? Principal rule concerning the Sabbath regular regarding children in captivity among... No, okay, I didn't read that yet. So may women go out. Pharaoh's daughter. Okay. Hold on again. Peculiarities. The wealth of our Eliezer. The father of the Bible of the sinner. Was this where I was? No. I was reading the thing about the swords. There we go. But why do I not remember this? I'm sorry. I got to go back and I got to read this. The wealth of our Eliezer. Because I remember reading it, but then I don't remember coming down and something about Pharaoh's daughter. Why did that glaze over my head? The wealth of R. Eliezer ben Azariah, penalty for the failure to warn one's family. Right, I remember saying that. Is death possible? Okay, the different signs on the forehead of the righteous and the wicked, the seal of God. So what are the different signs on the forehead mean? Are these like signs like you would just look at a guy and you could see something in their forehead that told you something about them? Or are they talking about you put a mark on a guy? Right? Because a lot of people that also talk about the mark of the beast, and some people say, like, does the mark of the beast, like, the mark of the beast will be something that the world government imposes upon man, and then there will be God's divine mark, which some will be slaughtered and some won't, you know. It's just like, it's this whole fucking fantasy way that the evangelicals see things ever since the Left Behind series. Hey, there's Howard. What's going on, dude? All right. Okay. Derivation of the merits of the fathers. Is death possible without sin? Is death possible without sin? Okay, yeah. That's that whole question, right? That's a hell of a question that if you don't really understand what's going on here, right? And we are far, far from a world of eternal life. But the more of us in alignment steers the course. Okay, so defense for Reuben, who is mentioned in the Bible, the sin of Rabbi Hanasi's justification for David. Was David guilty of listening to slander? Okay, I forgot. I didn't hear that, right? Consequences of David's sin. King Solomon's sin. The Archangel Gabriel's act at the time of King Solomon's marriage with the Pharaoh's daughter. The most fervent penitence. Okay, so there we go with that. Law concerning amulets, both tried and true. Ordinances concerning hairpins, perfumes, bottles. Right, okay. All right, now back to Mishnah 4 to 9. Or did I get to the end of that? Shields, are they considered ornaments? Rewards emanating from proper study of the law. Okay, no, yeah, we got to keep reading. Okay. Interpreting... Oh my God. Interpretation of biblical passages. Are they to be taken? Yep. Okay. So rewards emanating from the proper study of the law. Customs of scholars when discussing the law. God's blessing upon scholars who mutually instruct one another. Regarding a man who keeps a vicious dog about his premises. Okay, right. So I kind of read through these so fast, and then I got sidetracked trying to find the word I forgot to look up. Why the children of Israel were in need of forgiveness upon their return from the war with the Midianites. What garments women, young girls, and boys may go out in on Sabbath. References to cripples and to children of princes. Concerning the danger of imitating the customs of the Amorites. Occurrences at the feast given by R. Akiba. So... things like concerning the danger of imitating the customs of the Amorites. So if this is all Sabbath-like, this is not about so much like you're acting like an Amorite, like, but on the Sabbath day, probably the Amorites had a similar kind of ritual. Maybe it was also on the same day, the same considered Saturn's day, the Amorites would do a thing. Oh, the Nolan... That's the thing, man. The trailer didn't really leave me with anything. I I don't know if this thing is going to be good. People are hyper distracted by the that helmet for Agamemnon and the whole like superhero kind of fucking Greek armor they gave him, you know? And people have a right to be that critical because, you know, like somebody thought Gladiator 2 was going to like be good. Yeah, like I don't know, man. I don't know, right? And I've not really cared. I mean, I think Nolan peaked at Inception. There, I said it. That's what I think. I haven't really been driven like a lot of his films are very narrative driven. I didn't like Interstellar that much. I thought it was a very like what I mean narrative, I mean like the narrative. And I don't like it when I have the narrative shoved down my throat. Occurrence at the feast given by R. Akiba. All right. We are going to stop right here at chapter 7 and we will take another break, and I don't have a song prepared, so I'm gonna have to pull something out my ass by looking around and picking something out of a hat. And it would be nice if Spotify gave me more freaking options outside of this band. They ought to know what genre I am generally poking my nose around in. Let me see here. Let's see. All right. Let's see what this gives me. Let's see. I might do a Flesh God Apocalypse song. I just typed in Tyrant because, you know, it's the tyranny of having to live by these rules every fucking week. I mean, like, it's one day a week, but it's every fucking week as your entire fucking life. No. I like the title, but the name of the band, no. All right, let's try Tyrant Synthesis's Metallic God. right. Whoops, where are we at? Okay, we're good. Oops, I think I skipped ahead a page. There we go. All right. Mishnah 7. That was not bad. That was kind of interesting. It was a little bit on the industrial side. The principal rule concerning the Sabbath. Regulations regarding children in captivity among the idolaters and converts. Remaining with idolaters. Rules concerning one who was ignorant as to what labor was prohibited on the Sabbath, but was conscious of the Sabbath, and vice versa. Concerning a man who, while traveling in a desert, had forgotten which day was Sabbath, how labor may be distinguished. Different instances of forgetfulness regarding Sabbath and the performances of labor on the Sabbath. See, like, you can't forget. Just like, you see, now you know that Jesus died for your sins. You know, come embrace God's love or die. Instances of forgetfulness in dietary matters. Instances of intentional and unintentional performances of labor and their distinction. Enumeration of the 40 less 1 acts of labor, principal and incidental acts. The degree of guilt involved in learning magical arts. Okay. Which is hysterical because they're in the middle of a ritual. That's the irony of it all, is that they're in a ritual, but it's a ritual to anti-gods. So it's kind of like an anti-magic kind of magic, because you're putting yourself in your own kind of like stasis cage. Condemnation of one who is able to acquire astronomical knowledge and neglects to do so. Hold on a minute. You are guilty for being involved in learning magical arts, but you are condemned if you understand astronomy and don't do it? Another rule was laid down. Discussions concerning the carrying out of necessary things on the Sabbath and the limitations of quantity. Different kinds of food may be counted together. Okay. Mishnahs 1 to 5. The prescribed quantities of wine, honey, and milk that may be carried out on Sabbath. The strength, like, who would be, like, enticed by all this? How much would you have to hate your life to say, I'd rather live like this? The strength of different wines. Instances of stronger creatures fearing weaker ones. Interesting. Why goats precede sheep in a flock? Interesting. Why are she-goats not covered with a tail like sheep? Why has a camel a short tail? Why has an ox a long tail? Like, what's this got to do with anything? These are what? Why is this discussion? Why would you have these discussions on the Sabbath and only on the Sabbath? Like that? Like these are Like, is it because you're eating them? What is this about? I don't think you even eat camel, but I mean, you eat horse. I suppose you could eat camel. As long as they're not a meat-eating animal, you can eat it. Why are the feelers of a locust soft? What is the reason that the lower eyelids of a hen turn up. Yeah, like, okay, interesting. Like, is this like because science, right? Like what? Are we gonna eventually be talking about like the lips of a chicken because we're trying to put a noose around a wolf's neck? Like, what's going on here? Um, Three creatures grow stronger, etc. The quantity of rope, paper from which writing has been erased, skins, parchment, bones, loam, etc., which may be carried out on the Sabbath. Honor of man supersedes a biblical commandment. What is magic? The explanation of the verse Isaiah. Mishnahs 1 to 7. Sayings and deductions of our Akiba, the day of the week and the month on which the law was given to Israel, assumption of authority by Moses and God's acquiescence, the name of the month on which the Israelites left Egypt, and was it an intercalary month? The compulsory acceptance of the law by the Israelites, and their subsequent voluntary acceptance in the days of Xerxes of Persia, Israel's readiness to obey even before hearing the publication of every word spoken by God in 70 languages. Comparison of the sayings of the Torah with a nobleman. The understanding of the law is healthful. Its misinterpretation is poisonous. Every word leaving the mouth of the Lord filled the world with aromatic odors. Complaints of the angels upon the ascension of Moses to heaven. Moses' answer, Satan. Satan's search for the Torah. Concerning the bearing of a slave towards his master. Rabbah lecture upon the patriarchs and their answers to the complaints of God concerning the children of Israel. Isaac's defense of the children of Israel upon the Lord's telling him that they had sinned. The quantity of spices, dyes, metals, peddlers' boxes, and seeds which may be carried out on the Sabbath. Interesting. Now, I have to ask another question. What is Satan's search for the Torah? For the Torah. I'm going to qualify this in the Talmud. Okay. Hold on a second. Maybe if I put the apostrophe where it belongs for the possessive. Satan is all too well aware of the malignant reputation as it brings damage. The Talmud leaves us with the image of Satan expressing his gratitude and the rabbis tell truth about his vastly underappreciated role in the divine. Okay. Hold on a second. Copy. I'm going to ask this question again because I didn't get an answer in DuckDuckGo that sounded like what I was looking for, so I'm going to do Google. Wait a minute. All right, I don't know where this term is coming from. It's not. I'm not getting anything that's popping up in any reasonable search engine results, so you're going to have to deal with that in the unknown just as much as I am for now. Okay. Mishnah, okay, chapter 9, Mishnahs 1 through 7. Sayings and deductions of Ar Akiba, the day of the week, and the month on which the law was given to Israel. Assumption of authority by Moses and God's acquiescence, the name of the month on which the Israelites left Egypt, and was it an intercalary month? The compulsory acceptance of the law by the Israelites and their subsequent voluntary acceptance in the days of Xerxes of Persia, Israel's readiness to obey even before hearing, the publication of every word spoken by God in 70 languages. Man, I read all this. Peddler's Box. Did I read all the way down here? I'm sorry I'm repeating myself. Saying search for... Oh, yeah, it was right there. Okay. Chapter 10. Mishnahs 1 through 8. Rules pertaining to one who carries out things valuable to him. The quantities in which they may be carried out. Quantities in which they may be carried out by one to whom they are not valuable. Concerning eatables which are carried out of the house and left on the doorstep, and things that are carried in the left hand, on the shoulder, on the head, or in the bosom, concerning one who, while intending to carry a thing in front, accidentally carries it on his back or vice versa. You know, this would not... I would never want to play this LARP. Do not ask me to LARP this ever in my life. What do these Jewish families do if they happen to have an autistic kid or something, right? How does the Jewish community handle some kid who, well, I'm sure actually, probably autism, probably an autistic kid is going to be fucking perfect in this kind of environment, maybe. I mean, OCD apparently is partly autist. I don't know, something's up, man. Something's up with it. But like, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how, like, New York City is the place that it is, and Brooklyn is the place that it is, and then it's got all these Jewish kids that don't just fucking run away and join the fucking circus. Chapter 10, Mishnahs 1 to 8. Rules pertaining to one who carries out things valuable to him. The quantities in which they may be carried out. The quantities in which they may be carried out. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Here we go again. Here we go again, doing it again. All right. Concerning the case of two men carrying out a burden which one alone was not capable of carrying. The law in that case, concerning the case of one who carries out eatables in quantities less than the limit in a vessel. Is he culpable for carrying the vessel or not? This is what the fuck is, like, maybe these people live in the Dark Ages. And the only reason why they have nice things is because they're going along to get along with where society is at. Because if they're arguing about this every fucking week, where is their time to be the Jew who figured out the nuclear physicist thing? Anyway, concerning the permissibility of paring the fingernails of one hand by means of those of the other hand oil, the Sabbath, the case of one tearing off flowers from a plant in an unperforated flower pot. So they could do it in a perforated one, or are there different rules for that? That is insane. Like, I want to have nothing to do with a God who expects this of you every fucking week. Tract Sabbath, Chapter 1, Regulations regarding transfer on Sabbath. There are two acts constituting transfer of movable things over the dividing line of adjoining premises based on biblical statutes. The two acts are, however, increased to 4 on the inside and to a like amount on the outside of the premises by the addition of the rabbinical statutes. How so? A mendicant stands outside and the master of a house inside. The mendicant passes his hand into the house through a window or door and puts something into the hand of the master, or he takes something out of the master's hand and draws it back towards him. In such a case, the mendicant is guilty of transfer, and the master of the house is free. If the master of the house passes his hand outside and puts a thing into the hand of the mendicant, or takes something out of the mendicant's hand and brings it into the house, the master of the house is culpable and the mendicant is free. If the mendicant extends his hand into the house and the master takes something out of it or puts something into it which is drawn to the outside by the mendicant, they are both free. If the master of the house extends his hand outside and the mendicant takes something out of it or puts something into it which is drawn to the inside of the master, they are both free. Gemara, we were taught Shiboth 4:2, the acts of transfer in the Sabbath are 2, respectively 4. Why is this teaching here specified as 2, respectively 4 on the inside and 2, respectively 4 on the outside, and there no such specifications was made? Said Papa, here the special subject of treatment is the Sabbath, and the Mishnah enumerates the cases which involve guilt and those which do not involve guilt, which were the principal subject of treatment, is a different one, and he mentions only the cases that involve guilt, leaving the cases that do not involve guilt untouched. Right, this is like Supreme Court litigation kind of bullshit, right? So, like, in this case, there's kind of like the Torah is a collection of ideas in which there must be discussion about. Thus far is kind of what we've gotten out of these moeds, right? And this is just the Sabbath stuff. Okay. Specify 2, respectively 4 inside. Here, special subject of treatment is the Sabbath, and the Mishnah enumerated, right? Okay, and guilt, while there the principal subject of treatment is a different one, and he mentions only the cases that involve guilt, leaving the cases that do not involve guilt untouched. But the cases that involve guilt are those by which acts of transfer are committed, and such are only 2. Nay, there are 2 acts of transfer from within the 2 from without, but the Mishnah says Yetziath, which in a literal sense means transfer from within, said Ashi. The Tana calls transfer from without by the same term, and for what reason? Because every act of removing a thing from its place is called Yetzia, said Rabina. The Mishnah also bears out this sense, for it speaks of Yetziath and immediately illustrates its remark by citing a case from without. This bears it out. Rabbah, however, says he, the Tana, speaks about divided premises, whose line of division is crossed, and in this case, there are only 2, in each of which there may be 4 acts of transfer. Said Metha to Abaya, are there not 8, even 12 instances of transfer over the line of division? And he rejoined such transfer as involve the obligation of a sin offering are counted, but those that do not involve such an obligation are not counted. They are both free was not the act of transfer committed by both, said Arhaya Bar Gamda. The act of removing the thing was committed by the joint efforts of both, and they, the rabbis, said, it is written in the law, when a person did it, when one person commits the act, he is culpable, But when an act is committed by the joint efforts of two persons, they are both free. I feel like that there's some principle in Gebo happening here, and that there may be an underlining of natural law in what is being attempted, right? Which Saturnian, on the positive side of Saturn, the practice of balancing value is a good thing, right? It's just that this shit kind of would drive you nuts. But this is almost like this exists because you live in a world where people around you exist while you're doing your thing in the Sabbath that have nothing to do with the Sabbath, and because that brings in elements that challenge you breaking your purity in this time, you go through specific, tedious details of meticulous work to do things a certain way, so that way you are holding the honor and the purity through the process of getting through some occurrence in life forcing you to do something like give somebody something, and then there's some sort of exchange rules or whatever. But anyway, it makes a tiny bit of sense. Like, but I would have to fucking sit there and strategically analyze all of those nuances to figure out exactly how it made sense. And we're going to move on to Rob questioned Rabbi, or Rob questioned Rabbi, if one were laden by his friend with eatables and beverages and carry them outside of the house, how is the law? Is the removing of his body tantamount to the removing of a thing from its place, and therefore he is culpable? Or is it not so? Said Rabbi to him, he is culpable. And this case is not like the case of removing his hand. Why so? Because in the latter case, the hand was not at rest, while in the former, the body, before and after removal, was entirely at rest. Said Rabbi Hayat Rab, descendant of nobles, did I not tell thee that when Rabbi is engaged with a certain tract, ask him not about a subject that is treated in another tract, for he may not have that subject in his mind. And if Rabbi were not a great man, thou mightest cause him shame, for he would give thee an answer which might not be right. Well, that wouldn't be that shameful. Like, I'm like that, right? Like, sometimes when I'm hanging out, like, here's a good example, right? Like, Jews, here, let me liberate you from this ridiculous problem. When I am, like, for instance, right now specifically, one could say I'm on track for being focused on the issue of Jewish law, culture, history, and affairs. Right? So, everything that I know, priority is in my random access memory, my RAM, right, is in my forward thoughts. I've driven them forward, right? This is, and you see my Agus Yelmer here, my northeast. Excuse me, mirrored image. Let me get on screen. Northeast. That's it. Northeast. Right there. Right? That's Asgard, right? That's your higher mind. Right? So you bring this to your forefront. And this is what sits in the all thing of your mind. That's okay. Right? We shouldn't, there's no reason, like, if everybody has to do this and everybody already there's literally nothing shameful. There's literally nothing shameful about that. You know, if that was me in that position, I'd be like, young one, I am on a track of this kind. I will need another week before I can answer that question for you. That's simple fucking enough, and there's no shame in it. Who the fuck would shame you for that? For fuck's sake, right? But the problem is that they've got somebody dedicated to a different fucking situation going on that would enforce shame for that. Ugh. But anyway, I would never use this kind of shit as a foundation for anything in anybody's fucking life. We can put any good I find in it into your life in a way independent of it. All right. In this instance, however, he gave a correct answer, as we have learned in the following Boretha. If one was laden with the eatables and beverages while it was yet light on the eve of Sabbath, and he carried them outside after dark, he is culpable. But, I'm culpable, for his case is not like that of removing the hand mentioned above. Abaya said, from all that was said above, it is certain to me that the hand of a man standing on the street is not treated as public ground, and I also see that if a man stands on private ground, his hand is not to be treated as private ground. Would it be correct then to regard the hand as unclaimed ground? If so, would the penalty imposed by the rabbi in such a case, namely that one should not move his hand containing a movable thing back during the Sabbath day, apply in this case or not? So it would be like you would lose agency over your hand by Jewish law for this? That's interesting. This also would probably be related to the same customs that eventually come out of Islam with chopping off your hand for stealing something. And Islam comes out of Judaism in a very particular way. Abaya said, from all that was said above, it is certain to me that the hand of a man standing on the street is not treated as public ground, and I also see that if a man stands on private ground, his hand is not to be treated as private ground. Would it be correct then to regard the hand as unclaimed? Okay, I'm sorry. During this, okay. Unclaimed ground. So the penalty imposed a rabbi in such case, move his hand, contain it back. The Sabbath day apply to this case or not? All right. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping over that. Come and hear the following Boretha. If a man has his hand filled with fruit and he extends it outside of the premises where he stands, one said he is not permitted to draw it back, and another Boretha says he is allowed to do so. May we not assume that this is their point of dispute. The former holds that the hand is treated as unclaimed ground, and the latter thinks that it is not like unclaimed ground. Nay, it may be that both agree that the hand as spoken of in our Mishnah is like unclaimed ground, and yet it presents no difficulty. One of the Borethas treats of a man who had extended his hand unintentionally, and the other one treats of a man who had put forth his hand intentionally. In the former case, the rabbis did not fine him, and in the latter case, they did. Man. And if you wish, it may be said that they both speak of a case when the act was done unintentionally, and their point of differing is as to the varying premises, whether the hand may be drawn back to the ground where the man stands, or to other private ground that adjoins it. As Rabbah questioned Ar Nahman, if the hand of a man was filled with fruit and he extended it outside, may he draw it back to the same ground where he stands? And he answered, he may, and may he remove his hand to other private ground. Nay, and to the question, what is the distinction? He said, if thou wilt measure a whole cur of salt and present me with it, I shall tell thee the answer. In the former case, his design was not accomplished. In the latter, however, his design was accomplished, and it is prohibited for fear that it should be repeated. Bibi Bar Abaya questioned, if one has put bread in the oven, is he allowed to take it out before it is baked, and he becomes liable to bring a sin offering or not? So the oven, even though it's in the house, because it's got its own inside in which an item can be handled into. Jeez. Right? Okay, so hang on a second here. Because, see, now we're in a section where we're not in these short little chapter bits. You see how this is going? And then this just goes on. So I'm going to go into another break and look and see all this, right? We're not reading through all of this tonight. This is so many damn pages. So many damn pages, right? And it's, you know, there's different Mishnah breakpoints. I can see that. See, there's Mishnah 4 right there. And then this just goes on for a while. Right, the 346 pages we're reading tonight. If I go down below, let's see, how much, what does the bottom of this look like? There's footnotes. Yeah, like all this stuff at the end I'll probably be reading. Oh no, that's all, okay, that's in the, okay, so that's, I might want to read the prayer, right? You know, this is just looking at the future for a minute here with you guys. Yeah, then here's chapter 24 at 323, right? So, yeah, it's going to be a hot minute. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of reading. It's going to take time. But we're going to get some goddamn answers, man. But first I got to get back to where was I? Let's get back down to, there we are. We're going to take the break right here. Yeah. And then we're going to, after the break, where do I want to go? How far down? There's a lot of shit. All right. We're going to break it off way before any of this. You can see the kind of hefty reading this is. There's a lot to fucking cover every page. So, we're going to be in here for the long haul. This one's going to take a while. This might be like, this might take like 30 or something fucking episodes or something. This is going to be a hot minute, maybe. Maybe. All right. Let's see here. I'm gonna try The Tyrant by Godkiller. Just throwing a dart at the wall.
We see a deadly sin on every street corner, in every home, and we tolerate. I'm setting the example. We see a deadly sin on every street corner, in every home, and we tolerate. I'm setting the example.
All right. So that was yeah, all right. So that was some EDM that had a wicked little sound to it. Yeah. Throwing it out. Yeah, just something I threw out there. I looked at the same list for when I said tyrant god. I just picked something else, and it gave me something wildly different. Good shit. All right, let's jump back into the game. Said Araha Bar Abaya to Rabina, what does the questioner mean? Unintentionally and without remembering that it is Sabbath. Then what does the expression allowed mean? To whom? He is still not aware of it. On the other hand, if he did it unintentionally and afterward he remembered of the Sabbath, how can he be liable to a sin offering? Did not a Mishnah state that the liability to bring such a sacrifice applies only when the failing was begun and accomplished unintentionally? Should it be understood that the act was done intentionally, then it would not involve the liability of a sin offering, but it would constitute a crime that involved capital punishment. This is but take it to become okay. What does the questioner mean unintentionally? One is put bread in the oven. Is he allowed to take it out before he's begged and become liable to bring a sin offering or not? So where was unintentionally stated anywhere? The latter, okay, was done, okay. That's up here, I see it. And if you wish, it may be said that they both speak of a case when the act was done unintentionally, and their point of differing is as to the varying premises, whether the hand may be drawn back to the ground where the man stands or to the other ground that adjoins it. As Rabbah questioned Arnahamin, if the hand of a man was filled with fruit, okay. And just double check, was there unintentional, was that word used again here? No. Okay, so they're litigating over the meaning of unintentionally in context of the Sabbath here. Right? These people want to be hired as your bureaucrat. So they can go and use these arguing skills they have for your alleged benefit. Anyway. Unintentionally and without remembering. Okay, and without remembering. And where was the point where he said and without remembering? Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. It's not even important, right? See, we're going to be weeding through a lot of shit that isn't important. But you kind of need to know that it's in there because it gives you a larger context of the entirety of the life that these people are living, which can tell you all sorts of things to make sense to you. And this will also help you out if you are ever dealing with the wrong side of one of these guys. Knowing a thing or two about them on a level that they're not used to our kind knowing about them. If they're just good dudes that may not know or in their heart believe some of the worser things in the Talmud, they're probably going to really respect you, right? Because not all of these so-called Jews are your enemy. And nor do I even mean to insult them by using the word so-called, although I do mean to insult my enemy, whoever my enemy is that won't tell me they are my enemy. But yet I see their workings in the world. All I know is that Mamdani hates individuals, so fuck that guy. Anyway. Say then, is it a crime that involves capital punishment? Aha, the son of Rabba, taught so plainly. Bibi Bar Abaya said, if one put bread into the oven, he is allowed to take it out before it may involve a case of capital punishment. The mendicant extended his hand, etc. Why is he culpable to complete the act? Imagine these fucking rabbis, like, if you're wasting your time litigating this in your own community, no wonder we don't have fucking flying cars. I can't think of a more fucking bullshit way to waste your time than trying to fucking live your life so you don't forget this shit on the Sabbath and get in fucking serious trouble. No thank you. That is a horrible fucking thing to press upon the nervous system. The mendicant extended his hand, etc. Why is he culpable to complete the act? There must be a transfer from the place that is 4 L's square and a depositing into a place of the same area, and such was not the case here, said Rabbah. Our Mishnah is in accordance with Ar Akiba's opinion, who holds that as soon as the air of a place surrounds a thing, it is equal to the thing being deposited in that place. But may it not be that depositing does not require 4 L's? For the reason stated above, but removing does, said R. Joseph. The teaching of the paragraph agrees, not with the opinion of R. Akiba, but with that of Rabbi, as we have learned in the following Boretha. If one threw an object from one street into the other, and there was a private ground between them, Rabbi declared him culpable, and the sages freed him. Hereupon, R. Yehuda, in the name of Samuel, said, Rabbi declared the man guilty of 2 offenses, one for having removed the thing from its place, and one for having deposited it in another place. Hence, in both, the 4 L's in question are not required. But with reference to this, it was taught that both Rab and Samuel said that the Rabbi declaration of culpability treated of a case where the private ground that divided the 2 streets was roofed, for the assumption is that a house must be regarded as a solid object that fills out all the space it occupies, but not when it was unroofed. You know what Donald Trump's problem is? He committed the raid on the Sabbath and he had to transfer missiles from one place to another place. Shame on you, Mr. President, you anti-Semite. Or something. Okay, alright. So wait, did I just read the but with reference to this was taught that both Rabbi and Samuel and rabbis called Billy treated as a case with a private ground divided between 2 streets? Yes, okay. So, therefore, said Rabbah, all these views can be dispensed with as the hand of a man because of its value. is considered as a piece of ground 4L square, and so also was declared by Rabin when he came from Palestine in the name of Ar Yohanan. Ar Abhin, in the name of Ar Ilaz, quoting Ar Yohanan, said, if one threw a thing and it rested in the hands of another man, he is culpable. Why the repetition has not Ar Yohanan declared above already that the hand of a man is considered as a space of 4L square? Lest one say that this is one only when he intended to put it into his hand, and the intention makes it valuable as the space in question, but not otherwise. Therefore, the repetition. Alright. In a less bullshitty justice system, I could have been a good fucking lawyer. But anyway. The same said again in the name of the same authority, if one remains standing in his place when he receives a thing, he is culpable. But if he was moving away from his place when he received it, he is free. And so also we have learned in a Boretha in the name of the anonymous teachers, Ar Yohanan asked the following question. If one threw a thing and then moved from his place and caught it, is he culpable or not? What circumstances? This is just the Sabbath. Do all you people have, like, ADHD and this is, like, your test? Like, oh, the tyranny that you have to put on your fellow man. I wouldn't even want to ask these questions. I wouldn't want to know the answers. I wouldn't want to put that on anyone else. Right? But because this exists, and it affects all sorts of people around us, we need to know about it and how it works. The same said again in the name of the same authority. If one remains standing in his place where he receives a thing, he is culpable. But if he was moving away from his place when he received it, he is free. And so also we have learned in a Boretha in the name of the anonymous teacher. Aryonan asked in the following, and he's like, okay, I'm sorry, if he moved from his place and caught it, sorry. So how is this question to be understood? Said Ar Abba Bar Abba. The difficulty is concerning the exercise of two forces by one man. And the question was thus, if two forces were exercised by one man in committing the prohibited act, should both parts of the act be accounted to the same so that he should be declared culpable, or should each part of the act be considered separate? All you have to do to torture a human being is tell him, put him in prison, and force him to live by the Sabbath every day. That's it. That's torture. Imagine you have to live by the Sabbath 24/7. This is just the Sabbath. Right? You know, it's not this crazy outside of the Sabbath. There's other crazy. But as far as personal drive yourself crazy. But anyway. Exercise one in committing the prohibited should be acted comedy the same, considered separately as if the two individuals concerned, and then he is free. This question is not decided. In the name of Ariana said, if one put his hand into the yard of his neighbor, got it full of rainwater, and withdrew it, he is guilty. But to make one guilty of the act, it must consist of removing a thing from a place of 4L square, which is not the case here, said Ar Heya Br Huna. It means that he took the water as it was running down a slanting wall. As Rabbah taught elsewhere, that removing a thing from a slanting wall made the man culpable. But in speaking of removing an object from a slanting wall, Rabbah treated on the question of removing a book, which is a stationary thing. Is it analogous of removing water that can never become stationary? Therefore, said Rabbah, our case, treats when he dipped the water out of a cavity in the wall in question. Is not this self-evident? Lest one say that water stands upon water is not considered stationary, he comes to teach us that it is, and thus it is in accordance with his theory as follows. Water standing upon water is considered stationary. A nut, however, lying upon the surface of water is not considered so. Right, sure. Right. They have to argue all this now so they can act in strange behavior without explaining themselves later. This is what this is. Okay. The same said again, in the name of the same authorities, one who is laden with eatables and beverages, entertaining and going out the whole day, he is not culpable until he rests, said Abhaya, and even then only if he stops for the purpose of resting, but not when he stops merely to adjust his burden on his shoulders. Whence is this deduced? From what the master said. He stopped within the limits of 4 ells to rest, he is free. But if he stopped to adjust the load on his shoulders, he is culpable beyond 4 ells. Just for adjusting his shoulders. If he stopped to rest, but he's already carrying things on his shoulders. So he has to burden them on his shoulders until the Sabbath is over? Is that what the fuck they're saying? This is fucking, this is the nonsense rules that they live by. All of this is based on, like I said, we're shit and it's a privilege that we're allowed to live. We have to put up with this every 7 days. Because we're shit and it is God gave us the privilege of life. Okay. I mean, you don't have time to figure out who you are and figure out the meaning of life if you're wasting your time living like this. You're so busy figuring out what God doesn't want you to do that you've forgotten to do what God wants you to do. Which is to affirm life and be excellent to each other. That's kind of simple. It's wild stallions, man. It's wild fucking stallions. Regardless of any conspiracies against Tom Althouse that Keanu Reeves is involved in. But anyway, I'm relying upon, intention of removing was before, wait, did I get to the end of this passage? Whoo, gosh. Whence is it to do beyond 4 ells? He stopped. It implies one cannot be culpable unless his intention of removing before he stopped. His shoulder, he's not culpable. What does this imply? It implies that one cannot be culpable unless his intention of removing was before he stopped. So he's not culpable if he intended to move it after he stopped. Anyway, the rabbis taught If one takes anything from his store into market through the alleyway where the benches of market men are situated, he is culpable. It makes no difference whether he carries, throws, or pushes it with his arm. Ben Azai, however, said, if he carries it in or out, he is not culpable. But if he throws or pushes it in or out, he is culpable. The same we have learned in another Boretha. And it's amazing that people are arguing this because they both agree that they ought to honor these ridiculous restrictions. Or at least they want to honor something else in which they can't unargue their way out of some degree of the restrictions, which forces them to be creative. It's like an exercise in bending the law through literalism. Or through anti-literalism, or through getting the particularities parsed correctly, trying to keep it within the literal so that way it is plain and clear and realistic and logical to God's purpose for the Jews. Something like that. There are four kinds of premises as regards the Sabbath: a private ground, public ground, unclaimed ground, ground that is under no jurisdiction. What is private ground? A ditch or hedge that is 10 spans deep or high and 4 spans wide, such as absolutely private grounds. What is public ground? A country road or a wide street or lanes open at both ends. Such are absolutely public grounds, so that in these two kinds of premises nothing must be carried from one to the other, and if such was done by one unintentionally, he is liable to a sin offering. If one, however, intentionally, then he is liable to be cut off, or to suffer the extreme penalty at the hands of human justice. And we all have an idea of these absurd particularities, right? Which are not absurd in a grander see, the people that are into this, like, there's a prior understanding of other things. And also there is the involvement of trying to keep up some sort of this nationality cohesion. And also part of having these things is like, well, theoretically it's in lieu of a nation. Right? And I suppose they probably also, because they, if they're a Jewish country, they probably build a lot of their homes and other places all designed to make sure that they have infrastructure to the needs of their religious identity. Okay. Okay, so the rabbis taught there are four kinds of premises regarding... Okay, I'm sorry, I read all that. Yes, I'm sorry, I read all that. A valley of fields, the front walk before a new row of stores, and unclaimed ground are neither like public nor like private. The sea is not public or private. A valley of fields, the front walk before a row of stores. Interesting. I suppose these are because they are things that are in between jurisdictions, right? This is the legality of the Jewish people, right? Nothing should be carried about there to start with, but if one has done it, he is not culpable. Nor should anything be taken out of these grounds into public or private grounds, or buying in from the latter into these grounds. But if one has done so, he is not culpable. In adjoining courtyards of many tenants and allies that are open at both ends, where the tenants have made it communal property, carrying things is allowed. However, it is not allowed when such is not done. A man standing on the doorstep may take things from or give things to the master of the house. So also may he take a thing from a mendicant in the street or give it to him, but he must not take things from the master of the house and hand them over to the mendicant in the streets, nor take from the latter and transmit to the former. Still, if this was done, all the three men are not guilty. Anonymous teachers, however, say that the doorstep serves as two separate grounds. When the door is open, it belongs to the inside, and when the door is closed, it belongs to the outside. But if the doorstep is 10 spans high and 4 spans wide, it is considered as a premises in itself. The master said such are absolutely private grounds. What does he intend to exclude by this emphatic declaration? To exclude that which our Yehuda taught about Erhobin. These are absolutely public grounds. What does it mean to exclude? To exclude another instance of our Yehuda's teachings concerning the enclosure of wells. Why does not the Boretha count the desert also? For have we not learned in a Boretha public ground is constituted by public roads, wide streets, alleys that are open at both ends in the desert, said Abia. Shouldn't the desert be treated like, I don't know, like the ocean or, an open field? It presents no difficulty. There the law was expounded as it existed when Israel dwelt in the desert. Here, however, the law is taught as it prevails at the present time. The master said, if one has brought it or taken out a thing unintentionally, etc., is not this self-evident. He means to say that if the culprit did it intentionally, he is liable, to be cut off, etc. Also, this is self-evident. He comes to teach because of the following statement of Rab, who said, I found mysterious scrolls in the possession of my uncle Arhaya, which read, Sai ben Yehuda says, there are 40 less one principal acts of labor. A man, however, cannot be guilty of performing but one, and to the question, how is this to be understood? The answer was, it should be corrected and read, there is one of those acts of labor for which a man is not guilty. In consequence, however, of the omission, just what particular act of labor is excluded? All the 39 remain doubtful, and the Boretha teaches that the labor mentioned is not one of the doubtful. Again, the master said, a sea, a valley of fields, etc. Is that so? Have we not learned Teheroth 6:7 that a valley is in summertime to be regarded as private ground with reference to the Sabbath? This is case law, Supreme Court. One guy's got one court case, the guy's got another fucking court case. They play this fucking game instead of using their minds for anything fucking useful. They could be solving so many other issues. Instead, they're just encircling all these issues. And how many people fucking got in fights about this shit? In the rainy season, however, it is private ground in all respects, said Ula. As a matter of fact, it is unclaimed ground. but by calling it private ground, the Boretha only means to distinguish it from public ground. R. Ashi, however, said he speaks of a valley in which there are partitions. And unclaimed ground are not all the above mentioned unclaimed ground. When R. Dimi came, he said, in the name of R. Yohanan, the mention of unclaimed ground. In this case, is required merely to imply a corner of a private plot that adjoins public ground. For although at times when the street is crowded, many people are forced into this corner, it is considered as unclaimed ground as the public use of it is not regarded with favor. He said also in the name of the same authority, the space between the pillars and the building on the side of the street is considered by the law as unclaimed ground. Why so? Because although many walk there still, since one cannot make his way in such space freely, the row of pillars being irregular or in a broken line, it is like unclaimed ground. So it's not entirely the legal status, it is also kind of the dimensional structure of the area, which often in common law is following these guidelines. So that makes sense, right? All right, we're going to take one more break before we get back into all of this. This is going to be a tedious ride, isn't it? Isn't it? But the payoff should come later, once we're out of all of the Sabbath stuff. Because the Sabbath is like their restrictions on themselves for this particular day. But we're going to start to get more out of it, I think, when we go through these other things. And if everything is showing us these different deliberated arguments, then we should be able to extract some very interesting information as we come across new terms, things involved in different kinds of rituals, right? Because this provides context to what you're getting out of Scripture, what you're getting out of occult Jewish texts, and what is going on with Jewish application of these things in their lives today. And how does that fit into the framework of matters of Zionism and Noahide law that is affecting people that didn't fucking ask for it? Okay, let's change tune here. So I'm good with let's go back to this and you got a cool name. Am I gonna like your music? Are you metal? What are you? Oh, your shit's all like 2 minutes long. Whatever you are, you're probably soundtrack music. That's probably what you are. It's this band called Warlord Colossus, and they're like 2-minute tracks. Didn't want to do with it. What are you? All right, we're gonna try Tyrant's Blood. We're gonna do Disowned and Defiled, and we'll see how this goes. This sounds like it's quite appropriate for all the terms of exile for being a bad boy on a Saturday. was not bad. Disowned and defiled by tyrant's blood. Tyrant's blood. Gotta say it like that. Blood. Alright. Let's do. We're gonna roll for about 20 more minutes or so. And then at 11 o'clock, we're gonna call it. Zera, in the name of Ar Yehuda, said, the benches in front of pillars are regarded as unclaimed ground, even if they are 10 spans high and 4 spans wide. The one who holds that the space between the pillars is considered as such will so much the more agree that the benches in front of the pillars are considered such. But he who says that the benches are so considered may hold that this is so because the encroachment upon them is not regarded with favor. The ground between the pillars, however, which is usually trodden by many people, is like public ground. Rabbah Bishila, in the name of Ar Hizda, said, if one throw or plaster an adhesible thing against the side of a brick that is standing up in the street, he is culpable. But if he throw or plaster a thing on top of it, he is not. Abeya and Rabbah both said, provided the brick is 3 spans high so that the people do not... So, like, why would you do such a thing on the Sabbath? Why is there a particularity on the Sabbath of doing such a thing? Like, why would you even be in a situation to do these specific things? Why would you, like, you should be having a conversation about things you would do on your day off, practically, because you're going to be fucking structuring your fucking day that you put aside to purify yourself for your Saturnian rites. Just like it's like, what kind of lesson in that is benefiting your life greatly is there to doing this for as long of your life as you do it as a Jew, to live and die under these circumstances? Can like, I could see maybe something this psychopathic being part of a whole, like, month. Like, I could see myself taking time to prepare to say, I'm gonna do this for a month. 4 weeks, 4 Sabbaths, and I'm gonna see if I can fucking do it, you know, as your own kind of personal purity test. Considering you could read the Torah, right? I just recently, as you know, did a 3-day fast. Kind of a 2.5-day fast, but it counts because I got ketone activation. It was long enough for ketone activation. And so there's all sorts of things you can extract and do in a more proper and purified manner. And then I don't think it is wise to make something your forever, right? Even though my tri-ritual practice that I always talk about is kind of a forever practice, but it's kind of not, because it's an Aquarian practice. It's very malleable and flexible. I have changed it as I have changed. as I have found a more meaningful manner in which I move with purpose, and speak with purpose, and stand with purpose, and do anything with purpose. All right. Rabbah of the school of Shila said, when Ardimi came from Palestine, he said in the name of Ar Yohanan, no space can be considered unclaimed ground unless it has an area of 4 spans square, and Ar Shesheth added that it holds good up to 10 spans square. What does it mean? Shall we assume that only if it has a partition of 10 spans, it is unclaimed ground? Has not Argedel in the name Arhaya Bar Joseph, quoting Rab, said, a house that is not 10 spans high, but which is raised to that height by the ceiling one may handle on the roof over its entire area inside the house, however, only within 4 L's square. I feel like what these guys are doing is that they're trying to do something that they want to do on the Sabbath, that they can do on the Sabbath, that they're not telling you is what they're trying to do on the Sabbath. And it's such a weird thing, and so they're asking roundabout questions to see, like, can I honor the Sabbath with as little inhibition to all of my little needs as possible, kind of thing, right? When it's like it makes me think of, imagine like you're in a cult, but I don't have the words for it right now. I kind of recognize what I'm looking at because I can see patterns playing out that look exactly like other patterns that I know. But I don't want to conflate the patterns I'm thinking of with the patterns that I know just yet. Well, I mean, never. I never want to conflate them. But I don't want to bring up the patterns that I know to compare them, because I have to be certain of what I think I understand, and I definitely don't understand shit, because I don't know about you, but I don't feel like looking up the names of why, like, all these guys matter. Has not our Gittel in the name of our Haya Bar Joseph, quoting Rab, said? I mean, that's a fucking mouthful, right? And it's saying that, like, these arguments are valid because of the name of the person giving that argument, meaning their community has an understanding of what they know within their rabbinical order. I'm assuming that these are all rabbis, right? Rabbi Shila, Rabbi Dimi, Rabbi Haya. I'm sure that R is all for rabbi, even though they don't throw it in there in every single thing. But anyway, a house that is not 10 spans right. So this would influence a great deal. Like, you would have these arguments, I bet, and then the Jews that get into construction, that get into building, well, they're going to build Jewish houses in a manner where, okay, it's going to be this many spans, this many L's here. I might want to have pillars over there. This is the way we're going to do things with how the kitchen is set up, so that way we can get around the issue with the oven. Right? Now, I am not saying with Talmudic practice of honoring the Sabbath that you do these kinds of things, right? This is also kind of I'm wondering exactly what I want to look into, because I know that at one point somehow, right? Because sometimes somebody gets through, somebody got on camera asking Charlie Kirk challenging questions about something written in the Talmud, and hit him with some very strong cognitive dissonant questions that, revealed that maybe he had a little bit of a conscience. That he wasn't all completely ensorcelled by Zionism. Right? But remember, we are commenting on a theater here that is not meant to produce your friends. So don't feel too bad. I mean, you wouldn't be human if you didn't feel a little bad, because it kind of sucks to see that. That's why it hurts. Why Charlie Kirk hurts so much for a lot of people is that he was taking the peak that his gatekeeper agreements were not going to fly with. And including the gatekeeper agreements he may not have fully realized he was dishonoring. And at what serious fucking level, when you don't understand what it is with the people you trust. Because remember, you're in a club where what someone thinks God thinks of them is more important than what you think of them. And God, by the same definition as the God that thinks so much of these people that he won't give them clear rules, but also won't punish them himself. And you assume that your elders have a right to punish you for God, because for some reason God's not allowed to interfere with the consequences of your relationship with Satan or something like that. Where were we? I raised to the height of the ceiling. Okay, implies that the law of the unclaimed ground is valid when the height does not exceed the spans. Ingenious scholar, treat not on laws of the Sabbath exceeding 10 spans in height, and to what does it apply? To private ground it could not apply, as it is known that private ground is so considered to the sky. Hence, it is only to unclaimed ground that above 10 spans does not exist, as the rabbis have invested unclaimed grounds with the lenient regulations pertaining to private ground, if the place have an area of 4 spans square. It is unclaimed ground. If it has a lesser area, it is not subservient to any jurisdiction. And with the lenient regulations of public ground, the place is regarded as unclaimed ground only to the height of 10 spans. Beyond that, it ceases to be unclaimed ground. The text says, in a house, the inside of which is not 10 spans high, etc., said Abaye, if, however, one has cut in it an excavation for L square so as to complete the height of 10 spans, one may handle things freely in the whole house. Why so? Because in such a case, the entire space of the house around the excavation would be considered like hills on private ground, and it has been taught that such holes are regarded the same as the private ground itself. I might have to bust into accents every once in a while to spice up the read. Why so? Because in such a case, the entire space of the house around the excavation would be considered like holes on private ground, and it has been taught that such holes are regarded the same as the private ground itself. As to holes on public ground, Abaya said they are like public ground. Rabbah, however, says that they are not. Said Rabbah to Abaya, is this why we have Jewish tunnels? So somebody can fucking do stuff on the Sabbath? According to your theory, excuse me, holes on public ground are to be considered the same as the ground itself. In which respect, then, does this case differ from what our Dimi said above? In the name of Ar Yohanan, let according to the opinion such a corner be considered as a hole in public ground. Nay, the use of the corner is not considered favorable by people, while no one objects to the use of a hole in the street. Ar Hista said, if a person erected a pole on private ground and threw something at it, if that thing rested on top of the pole and that pole 100 ells high, the person is culpable, for private ground is absolutely unlimited in height. Shall we assume that Ar Hizda holds in accordance with Rabbi of the following Boretha? If one threw a thing in the street and it rested upon the smallest cornice of a house, according to Rabbi, he is culpable, and the schoolmen say that he is not. Said Abaya, in private ground, all admit the decision of Ar Hista. The case, however, in which Rabbi and the sages differ was a tree that stands on private ground with its branches reaching out into public ground, and one threw a thing which rested on a branch. Rabbi holds the branch in part and parcel of the root, but the sages opine that we need not assume such to be the case. Does somebody get decapitated if they fuck this up? Right? Like, when do penalties of death, like, is it assumed that there is a possibility of you dying for doing any of this? For you being excommunicated for doing any of this? Or just taxed a lot? Fined, rather? Alright, okay, so if there was a tree that stands on private case, so Abai said if one threw a beehive which was 10 spans high but not 6 spans wide into the street, he is culpable. If, however, the beehive was 6 spans wide, he is free, because it is considered a piece of private ground in itself. Rabbah, however, said he is not, even if it be less than 6 spans wide. Why so? Because it is impossible for twined reed not to exceed the given height, in case he threw the beehive with its mouth down, even if the hive is a trifle over 7 spans high. He is culpable, but if it is 7.5 spans high, he is not. Ar Ashi, however, said, he is, even if it is 7.5 spans high. Why so? because the enclosing rim of the beehive is made for the purpose of containing something within and not to be attached to the ground. Hence, it is not included in the lavud class. Ula said a post 9 spans high, which stands in the street, and people use it to shoulder their burdens on. If one threw a thing and it rested on the top of it, he is culpable. Why? So, because a thing that is less than 3 spans high is stepped upon by many. A thing between 3 and 9 spans high is not used either to step or to shoulder a burden on. But it is 9 spans high, it is surely used to shoulder burdens on. Fascinating. Abaya questioned Rabbi, or Ardios, I think R is, I'm going to say Rabbi. What is the law of a pit or similar depth? Said he, the same as of the post, Rabba. However, said, a pit of similar depth is not governed by the same law. Why so? Because the use which is made of a thing through compulsion is not called a customary use. Fascinating. Okay, here we are at the top of page 39. Let me double check where we are here, how far down things go. Still a great distance. So, if I go back to page 39, it'll remember where we are leaving off. There. Up here. Whoops. Come on. Right there. Alright, so that's where I'm going to close us out. Alright, guys, that is the end of the night for me. When did I start? 8 o'clock? I gave you 3 fucking hours. That's a marathon. Alright. Catch you later.